those who've walked out on first dates, what was your I'm out of here moment? Legitimately, when she said she needed to take a wee as we walked down a back alley to the next bar, she pulled her jeans down, took a crap behind a bin, then searched in the bin and wiped with a sheet of newspaper. I was totally infatuated with her after working with her for a few months, and in 30 seconds it disappeared. Fast. I laughed the hardest at this one. Holy crap. First date, we are at a Japanese restaurant. She asked me my star sign. I replied Scorpio. She leaned over the table and slapped me clean and hard across the face. Naturally, I was shocked and confused. I mouthed, "What?" She firmly says I never date Scorpios. I went to the bathroom, came back, she had gone, and paid for everything. At least she paid, so at least that's something. She told me she was probably going to ghost me and then asked me to buy her a second drink while I was only a couple sips into mine. This has villain reveals their plan to the hero before the plan has succeeded energy. The guy wanted to play Never Have I Ever as an icebreaker. He goes first and says never have I ever drank my own fluids. He then proceeds to neck his entire pint. Later's mate. She had 22 cats and would just randomly take in strays, not give them any vet care, and was planning on keeping a recent litter. I love cats. I paid the bartender when she went to the bathroom and hyper walked to the door. Forwarded her contact info and a summary of what she told me to the Humane Society. I love cats, but that's damned ridiculous. I'd never have more than I can afford to care for. Good on you for forwarding it to the Humane Society. Those kitties need better homes. Went to meet a guy for the first time at his house. There was a pile of toenail clippings on his coffee table, and it wasn't one recent clipping. It was like many clippings. Out the door I went. How rude of you to refuse your dowry. Went to pick up my blind date. She opened the door and looked at me. You. I looked at her and said yeah, I agree, and turned on my heel and left. Total date time less than 5 minutes. Sounds like less than 1 minute. This guy and I were eating dinner after chatting for a couple of weeks, and unprompted, in the middle of something I was saying, and completely unrelated to what was being discussed, he said something along the lines of, "So you know, in order for this to work you're gonna have to share yourself, right? My friends and I like to pass girls around." I was pretty dumbfounded, and after a bit of stuttering I told him I didn't think it was going to work, asked for a to-go box and my portion of the check, and noped the frick out of there. Sadly, I was inexperienced when this happened and had to wait until the end of the date, but after meeting him I said I'd go and get drinks. He said at a girl and slapped my butt. In shock I went to the bar and got the drinks. I should have walked out of the exit immediately. He was obnoxious. Invited me inside while he finished getting ready. No biggie. Once inside he insisted that I'll let him show me his dungeon. Dude's apartment was pretty empty, minus a TV and couch, but his bedroom was kitted out. He then wanted now uncomfortable me to see if the shackles on his bed fit me. Thankfully, I had set up for a friend to call me within the first 30 minutes of the date, and I faked an emergency. I had to pick him up and he complained about everything. My car, the way I drove, my music taste. Why was I being so quiet while carefully plotting my escape plan? Definitely the moment he said my friends really want to meet you. I need them to know you're real, and that's when I bounced. This is meeting someone from an online dating app. He turned up with pupils the size of dinner plates, and super erratic. He said he'd forgotten his wallet, so I got the first round. We were on the way to the second pub to meet his mates so they could lend him some money. For the walk there he spoke absolute garbage and nonsense non-stop, but ended with how he tried to drown his ex's chihuahuas in a pool. Near the pub he said he had to answer whoever was calling him on the phone. At this point we were 30 minutes into the date and already going to the next pub. He downed his drink in about 3 seconds. Whilst he stood there on the phone I said I would meet him at the pub. Everything was all in close proximity, but instead walked past it and ran all the way home. Only happened once. She kept talking about her ex. I asked if she wanted to get back with him. She said I don't know and showed me a picture of him. Couldn't leave fast enough. On a first date with a military guy, he spent a large portion of the date talking about why the strippers in Toronto were better than the strippers where we lived. To change the topic, I asked him if he did any volunteer work with the military overseas and he said no. I joined the military to kill people, not help people. I got my bill, chugged my beer, and left as fast as I could. Geez, that guy was a bullet dodged. I go to a bar and meet this cute girl and we get along pretty fine. She invites me back to her place, but it turned out that she was with her friends at the bar and they were just giving her some space for us to talk. They were all drunk and her friend was insisting on driving home, so she, her friend, agreed to let me drive them home because the friend was very set on not leaving her truck parked outside a bar overnight. We get all the way to their apartment complex and then getting into the parking spot was tricky, so the drunk friend truck owner insisted on parking and pulled the "I legally own this vehicle" card. I was some guy her friend just met at a bar, so I was like, okay then. Within 5 seconds she backs the truck into a drainage ditch and gets it stuck. We all have to push the truck and get covered in mud. While we were doing that, the girl I met at the bar had lost her wallet, so I dug through the mudwater ditch at like 4 AM and didn't find her wallet. We get back to her place and the mood is definitely ruined. So we end up eating a random cheese and meat platter from Safeway on her kitchen floor at like 4 AM. I sleep on the couch and wake up early and I think, well, she was great, it was just the whole truck thing that ruined it. I look for a pen and paper to write down my number before leaving. All I can find is a piece of paper taped to the inside of the door. It was a court date notice for a domestic violence abuse hearing. I just left and chalked it up as a strange night. You have no replies to this because I think we're all just flabbergasted. Bullet equals dodged. He invited me and a friend to play dodgeball with a group of folks I've never met. We're having an okay time. He's paying more attention to his friends, but that's fine because I've got my friend to keep me occupied. We're hanging out in the parking lot before the first game is about to start when out of nowhere he grabs a ball and throws it at my crotch as hard as he can. This mother screams wham, bam, right in the clam. I immediately turn to my friend and ask her if she's ready to leave. I say goodbye to him and his friends. Immediately come home to a grip of texts about how immature I was behaving. This mother screams wham, bam, right in the clam. He probably would have screamed the exact same thing if you had hooked up with him. Great chats online. Decided to meet in person. He's got a Bluetooth headset with a little LED light that shows it's on. He keeps it on during drinks. I work up the nerve to ask if he can't take off the headset while we're eating dinner. With pride and complete confidence he says, "Don't worry, you totally have my full attention. This isn't a phone headset, it's a camera." 1 PM lunch date and she was drunk as a skunk. She invited me back to her place, where she said her 2-year-old son wouldn't even notice. I noped out and called her a cab home. I still feel bad for the son years later. I honestly tried to be tactful at each step, but it was the way it kept escalating. First date over dinner she let slip that she had a 2-year-old, us late 20s-ish. Okay fine. That's a new element to this which I never heard before the date. Then his dad was a sugar daddy. I'm okay. Well, I am not to judge. Oh, and then but he isn't looking to be a dad. He just pays me child support. Righto. I still get messages when he's frisky, but I promise to end it when we are exclusive. Oh good. I definitely want more kids, but he is reluctant because he would be paying more, so he's been pulling out. MHM. Do you want to come back to my place? Say what now? Oh, but I'm on birth control. You can see M in me, babe, it's okay. Don't worry. Yeah, nah, I'm good. I'm convinced I was about to become a donor for her next paycheck. That's just scummy as frick. Kids shouldn't be used as paychecks. I had a first date with a girl who told me, actually I'm engaged but I'm not 100% sure if he's the right one. So I'm going to go out on a few dates to see if I change my mind. Check please. Well, at least she is honest from the get-go, lol. He kept saying things like I hope people from school see us together so they stop calling me gay, and then spoke about my friends' genitals. Then asked if he could come to the toilet with me. It was Valentine's Day. We never spoke again. Not my story, but a friend's which has always creeped me out. She met a guy through an app and they got on well chatting, so decided to meet up. They had a nice lunch and then went for a walk around the city. When they passed through an alley, he stopped and said, "You look so good. I really want to rape you right now." She thought she'd misheard and asked him to repeat it, and he doubled down, "I want to throw you down and rape you right now." She told him how fricked up that was and said she was going home and headed for the train. He caught up and said he was only joking and walked with her the rest of the way. Just before the train arrived, he said it again and that it was her fault for looking so good. She told him they were done and not to call her again. She got texts the rest of the week telling her that she was being immature, couldn't take a joke, and was probably a W anyway. God, those W that don't want to either have sex or be raped. Grrrr, totally whorish behavior, saying no and storming off. She asked, "So how old do you think I am?" I replied, 23 like you said you were. "I'm 16. I stood up, put cash on the table for the food, and walked out. I don't need that crap. The fact that within 10 minutes of meeting him he started making sexual comments and joking about following me home so he could stalk me if I rejected him. I got out with the help of a bartender who let me leave out the back door. Shout out to bartenders everywhere who do this sort of thing. Had a first date with a girl who insisted we go to a really expensive place, where she ordered a $25 appetizer, $45 steak and a $15 drink. She wouldn't put down her phone, kept taking calls and answering texts. The waitress noticed and motioned for me from behind her. I excused myself, and the waitress had separate bills all made up and asked if I wanted to pay my share and leave her at the table. I said, that would be wonderful, so I did. That waitress is one of the real ones. Probably sees stuff like that happen all the time. When I realized she was trying to get her ex get jealous of me, she chose the place and time, and it was where her ex worked at the time. Left and apologized to the ex. Later she texted me saying that she'd forgive me for the faux pas if went to another date she still picked the same time and place. I ghosted her. Not me, but this happened to a friend. Context: friend has a beard. So my friend picks up this girl and they're on their way to dinner and she says, "You do realize that if this is gonna work you have to shave that off, right?" He didn't say anything, just turned around and dropped her back off at her house. I like my beard way too much to shave it. Only done it once for a friend's wedding to see what it was like, but never again. Went on a date with a girl that I met through a mutual friend. We went bowling and then afterwards out to dinner at a local restaurant. She said she'd be right back after we arrived at the restaurant and went to the bathroom. She was in there for quite a bit and came back acting very different than the bowling alley. I didn't think much of it and we ordered our food. A little later we're eating and I've been talking for a bit, kinda into my food, but after a while of not hearing a response I look up and she's passed out in the table. I tried waking her up and she shot up asking me what was wrong. I told her she fell asleep and asked if she was okay and she looked me dead in the face and said no, I wasn't. Long story short, turns out she was on pills. She started nodding in and out soon after that and I left a $100 bill on the table and left. Never seen or heard from her ever again. My sister met some guy online who claimed to be a doctor. Anyhow, he came to pick her up and she gets in the car and notices in the backseat a roll of duct tape, KY jelly and a few sex toys. The huge black butt plug really freaked her out. She got out of the car and ran into her house. She never spoke to him again. She just wouldn't stop talking about rape in the sushi restaurant. With all my power I tried to veer the subject somewhere else until she called me a rapist just right there with heads turning at me. At that point I was done. Paid the tab and got the heck out mid-meal. IDKY, but you specifying that she was doing this at a sushi restaurant in particular made me laugh. Where the fish is raw and so are the conversation topics apparently. Invited me to a bar which was apparently close to his apt and kept wanting to snuggle at his apt with me. I left to a friend's party and met the man I've been with for 3+ years. The first guy later texted me a dong pic on Easter Sunday. Did it come with the caption, "He has risen. Still gross, hope you reported him." Guy wanted to meet a place I used to work at. I showed up and he was already there. I order vodka and we're glaring into the menu while his shots arrive and he's just pounding them. Base bartender is giving the stinky. I know him so I'm like WTF. The date steps out for the bathroom or vape and the bartender beelines to my table to warn me this guy is a raging alcoholic that fricked around with his cousin a few months back. I noped right out of there. We chatted online. At the time I was a smoker and told him. He said no big deal because he smokes too. Decided to meet up at Starbucks for coffee. First thing he said, "Hi, by the way, when I said I smoke, I was talking about M." I said oh, bye, and turned around and left. If it were me, I would have assumed it was a bad joke until I realized it wasn't. He brought 2 friends along, which was unexpected. They were all drunk. I flagged down a waitress while one guy left to go do something. I ordered my food, the other 2 confessed they'd already eaten. Third guy walks back into the restaurant, dripping blood from a horrific gash in his arm. In shock, I ran to my car and grabbed my first aid kit, cleaned and butterflied the wound, bandaged it, had the guy elevate his arm while the waitress called 911, got cleaned up, returned to find the uninjured guys had just eaten my food, grabbed my kit and my purse and walked out. It sounds like you went on a date with the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia crew. She finally let it slip that she had a BF LOL, but it was totally fine. BC things had been going bad for a long time and she was going to break up with him. My thoughts were that if she would do that to him, she'd do it to me. No thanks. Was told by an elderly gentleman, once you lose them, how you found them. He invited me out to dinner. I always made it a point to drive myself on first dates. When I got there, his friend, M, was with him and did not have a date. They had obviously been there a while, as they were kind of drunk and still drinking. I sat and had a drink, and they mainly spoke to each other, except to make a comment about my appearance, to each other. I excused myself to the ladies' room, went to the maitre d', and asked him to please say he never saw me leave. I left the restaurant and drove home. Thank God this was before cell phones or internet. His vivid description of his alien abductions. Multiple abductions, in fact. There wasn't enough alcohol at the bar to keep me there. He spent the whole meal talking about how he only dated nurses because they were great caregivers and looked after him. He talked about his last GF who, after working her shift, came over to his place and did his laundry. I was a cook, but he was willing to give me a tryout depending on how good my cooking was. We left and there was a busker outside with a crowd and we stopped to watch. I slowly edged my way into the back and then quickly walked away. He also showed up in sweatpants for an evening meal. We were back at her place. She pulled out a giant glass jar that was full of what I thought was moonshine. She proceeded to explain to me that it's 100% GHB and that her kink is to be drugged with it before sex. She went into the bathroom and I got the heck out of there so fast that my imprint on the couch probably wasn't gone by the time I was driving. That is a court case and jail waiting to happen. Glad you got out of there. Some people just aren't right. He was 45 minutes late picking me up. Weather was quite poor, so I gave him a pass. I get to the coffee shop, take off my jacket, and immediately he says, "I see you brought your A game. Or should I say, D game," referring to my breasts. I'm surprisingly busty for my frame. Even the people 2 tables over just stopped and looked at him. That would be hilarious if my long-term boyfriend, who knows I love crude jokes, said it to me after a year of dating, not 10 minutes. She brought her pet rat with her that was hanging out in her bra, feeding it French fries. She casually mentioned she had warrants, so I just faked an emergency and bailed. Disney princess vibes. The whole day she wouldn't get off of her phone. She would only answer any of my questions with a hum or okay yeah without even looking up. I finally gave up and said I was going to use the restroom and never saw her again. I want to know how long it took her to realize that you've left. Was talking to a guy who was a maths professor, invited me on a date to an outdoor play where he was playing an important role. I show up to see it's a church picnic and he was playing the devil. Introduced me to his family and all they talked about was Weird Al music. They didn't listen to anything but Weird Al. Then his sister got on a loud tangent about why I went to a private school, since unknownst to me he had told them everything about me and every conversation we had. Faked an emergency to get out of there. He wanted to take me to the state fair for a second date with his whole family. Having studied maths, I'm not sure this guy would even be one of the top 5 most eccentric people I've met in the department. The family, on the other hand, when she had her ex's leather jacket and a bunch of his DVDs in the trunk of her car, and said that I was welcome to take whatever I wanted. She smelled like an ashtray and wouldn't stop talking about her exes, then went into detail about her mental health issues. Seemed like she wanted someone to come along to fix her. I actually got a call from work, so I had to leave. I was so thankful, as I probably wouldn't have gotten away otherwise. I was on a date with a guy I matched with that I had also met briefly at an anime con earlier that year. We planned to grab lunch and just walk around the mall and hang out. In the middle of lunch at the food court, his friends showed up and said hi, and he invited his friend to join us, then proceeded to leave me out of the conversation for the rest of lunch. But I stuck it out because I figured maybe his friend would leave after lunch, but nope. 15 minutes into walking around, his friend showed no signs of leaving. So I said I'm gonna leave so they can hang out, and both were just like, okay bye. It was fun. I got to speak to him for all of 10 minutes on this date. Did not text him back after that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.